Does your dick make you insecure? Be honest. You already know the feeling. Girlfriend's asleep. You're not. And there's one thought looping in your head that you will never say out loud. Here's what's crazy though. You are not the first man to think this. Not even close. Guys have been having this exact 3 a.m. spiral for thousands of years. Different centuries. Different continents. Same thought. And some of them didn't just lie there. They did something about it. Weird things. Documented, real, historical things. A cot with a hole cut into it. Insect bristles. 10 nights straight. But that's not even the wildest part. Because one entire civilization looked at a big penis and thought that guy has no self-control. Not lucky. Not blessed. Weak. Stick with me. Because by the end of this, you're going to know exactly which civilization that was. You're going to know what ancient women actually said about all this, which is almost nothing. And that silence tells you something too. And you're going to know why the thing keeping you up tonight might not even be about your body at all. It might be about an app. Let's start with the question everyone assumes has an answer. Were ancient men actually bigger? Smaller? Different? Here's the truth. Nobody knows. Soft tissue doesn't survive thousands of years in the ground. No skeleton tells you this story. Every cavemen were massive claim you've seen online is a guess wearing a costume. But here's what we do know, and it's stranger than any ancient myth. Researchers pooled 75 studies, 55,000 men. Global average, erect, sits around 5.5 inches. That's not the shocking part. The shocking part is that number has grown, 24%, in the last 29 years, not over 10,000 years. 29. Nobody's totally sure why. One leading theory points at hormone-disrupting chemicals in your food, your water, your containers. It's not settled science, but it's the leading guess right now, and it's a strange one to sit with. Take a breath here, because the next part is the one that actually flips this whole video. So the real twist isn't ancient men were different than you. It's that your body might already be changing right now, and nobody asked you first. Now here's where it gets interesting, because size wasn't always the flex you think it was. Ancient Rome worshipped it. A well-endowed man was blessed by Fortuna, the goddess of luck herself. Romans hung phallic wind chimes in their homes the same way you'd hang a painting. Big meant lucky. Small meant the universe had denied you something. And we're not just guessing about this. Roman writers like Martial and Petronius wrote about it directly. Bigger being something to brag about. Smaller being something to mock a man for. But the clearest evidence isn't even in the literature. It's graffiti. Actual scratched into the wall graffiti found in Roman bathhouses, boasting about size the exact same way guys today boast in a group chat. 2,000 years apart, same instinct. Before we even get to Greece, Egypt had its own version of this too. The god Min was worshipped, openly, as an erect fertility figure. Egyptians didn't hide sexuality in their religious art the way later cultures would. To them, it wasn't shameful. It was sacred, tied directly to the harvest, to abundance, to life itself continuing. Sit with Rome and Egypt for a second, because what you're about to hear next is the exact opposite, from a civilization living right next door at basically the same time. Cross into ancient Greece. Same era. Completely different rulebook. Look at their statues. Gods. Athletes. Heroes. Small. Deliberately small. The men who got the big, exaggerated versions in Greek art weren't the heroes. They were satyrs. Fools. Symbols of an animal lacking any self-control. To a Greek, small meant restrained, intelligent, in control of yourself. Big meant you were basically an animal that hadn't evolved past its urges. This wasn't a fringe opinion either. It shaped Greek sculpture for centuries. The same aesthetic rules got copied by artist after artist, generation after generation, until heroic equals modest was just assumed. The same way we assume muscular equals attractive today, the theory without ever question still debate. Some trace this ideal back to a wrong ancient belief about how conception actually worked. A science mistake that may have hardened into a beauty standard over centuries. Nobody can prove it was the only cause. But it's a compelling piece of the puzzle. Either way, this was never really about anatomy. Not even close. Let that breathe for a second before we move to what people actually did about it. Now let's talk about what people actually tried to fix it. Because some of what you've heard is real history. And some of it is complete fiction, someone invented to sell you a pill. Real, documented, sitting in actual ancient texts, real. The Kama Sutra and a medical text called the Sushruta Samhita describe an actual enlargement ritual. A man on a cot with a hole cut into it, using gravity, rubbing insect bristles and oil into the area for 10 nights straight. That's written down. That's over 1,000 years old. But here's what almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most important part of this entire video. The Kama Sutra didn't actually rank size at all. It split men into 3 types: hare, bull, horse, small, medium, large. And it split women into 3 matching types too. And instead of saying bigger is better, it built a whole system around compatibility. Match the right pairing, and both people get what they actually need. Ancient India rejected bigger equals better over 1,000 years before we built an entire internet industry around convincing you otherwise. Let that sit for a second. Now, other real ones. In Borneo, men of the Dayak people practiced genital piercing with decorative attachments. In early 1900s, Polynesia, anthropologist Margaret Mead documented men using a weighted wooden tube to stretch the area over years. Jelking, a manual stretching method some guys still swear by today, traces back to early Arabic regions centuries ago. Now the fake stuff. The stuff you've definitely seen and probably believed. Crocodile dung and honey in ancient Egypt. An 8,000-year-old cave painting in Turkey supposedly proving cavemen were huge. Medieval doctors prescribing chopped earthworms. None of it traces back to a real historian. None of it traces back to an actual archaeological find. It traces back to modern enlargement pill blogs, repeating each other's made-up history to sound credible while selling you something. That's not ancient wisdom. That's ancient flavored advertising. So did any of the real methods actually work? Mostly, no. Modern doctors reviewing these old techniques generally agree most cause tissue damage instead of lasting change. Weighted hanging specifically has been shown to reduce girth over time, the opposite of what it promised. So the guy on that cot, 10 nights straight, insect bristles and oil, he probably wasn't ahead of his time. He was just as stuck in the exact same loop you might be in right now. Different tools, same fear. Quick recap before we jump forward. Rome celebrated size. Greece mocked it. India refused to rank it at all, and almost none of it actually worked. So where did all this anxiety go? It didn't disappear. It just changed its outfit. In 2022, researchers studied what happens to men who spend time exposed to the hashtag penis enlargement on Instagram, tracked over 6 months. Here's how they actually did it. They first pulled the 100 most recent public posts under that hashtag and fact-checked every single one. Then they tracked real men's mental state before and after sustained exposure to that content. Their genital self-image dropped significantly. And when researchers checked how much of that original content was actually medically accurate, 1%. 99% of what was fueling all that insecurity was noise, misinformation, content built specifically to make you feel like something's broken, so you'll buy the fix in the caption. The same study found something even heavier. The more disrupted a man's genital self-image became, the more it correlated with symptoms of anxiety and depression. Not just body image discomfort, actual mental health decline, traced back to a hashtag. This isn't a group chat joke topic. For a lot of guys, it's quietly sitting underneath their confidence, their comfort in relationships, whether they speak up at all. Now here's the part that might actually change how you think about all of this tonight. What did women actually say about any of this? Ancient sources, in their own words? Almost nothing survives. The statues, the graffiti, the poems, nearly all of it was made by men, for men, judging other men. Women's own voices on this were barely written down at all. That silence says something on its own. This was mostly men performing for other men. So modern researchers finally just asked women directly, using actual physical models instead of vague survey questions. And the answer women gave was almost anticlimactic, barely above average, nowhere close to the size most men quietly assume they're being measured against. Meanwhile, most men already rate themselves as average and still want to be bigger anyway. So the gap was never really between men and women. It was between what women actually say and what men imagine happening in their heads. So go back to that guy on the cot in ancient India. 10 nights. Oil and bristles. Chasing something history now tells us almost never worked to solve a problem a woman probably never even had with him in the first place. And go back to you, lying there tonight, running that number on a loop, next to someone who was very possibly never doing the math you think she was doing. You're not broken. You're not new. You're just the latest guy in a very long line of guys who got convinced a body part could answer a question it was never actually being asked. The real question was never how big. It was always, am I enough? And that question has never once been answered with a ruler. If this one hit different, do 3 things for me. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. because we're going back to cover what ancient people actually believed about childbirth. And trust me, it's way stranger than this. Drop a like if any of this surprised you. And in the comments, tell me which ancient civilization shocked you the most.